My family stole $93,000 for luxury vacations while I supported them. I disputed it all as fraud, and now my parasite brother works loading boxes with his wages garnished, paying me back every cent. I'm 29 years old. I'm a creative director at an agency in Chicago, and honestly, I never thought I'd write something like this. But what happened to me a few months ago still has me processing everything. You know, like I can't believe my own family did this to me. I make decent money, I'm not gonna lie, like around $140,000 a year or so. And I guess that was the problem from the beginning, that everyone assumed I was like the family bank or something. But let me backtrack a bit because this story starts way before the day I literally discovered my family had stolen almost $100,000 from me. I grew up being the older brother, the responsible one, the one who got good grades and did everything right, while my younger brother Austin basically floated through life doing nothing. Austin is 25 now, and he's been like 3 years without working, living at my parents' house playing video games all day. And when I say all day, I mean literally, from the moment he wakes up until 3 in the morning. My parents, especially my mom, have always treated him like he was made of glass, like asking him to get a job or pay rent was equivalent to torturing him. I, on the other hand, moved out as soon as I turned 18, went to college on scholarships and student loans that I paid myself, worked while I studied, and when I graduated, I got my first job in advertising making peanuts, but proud to support myself. The thing is that like 6 years ago, when my career started taking off, and they promoted me to creative director, my parents started coming to me with money problems. At first it was small stuff, like they needed $500 for a car repair, or the washing machine broke down and they needed $1,000 for a new one. I always said yes because, I don't know, I thought that's what you do when your family needs you. You know what I mean? But over time the requests became more frequent and bigger. I started giving them $2,000 a month to help them with the mortgage because my dad had lost his job and was struggling to find something new. My mom had never worked full-time. She always had part-time jobs here and there, but nothing serious. And Austin, well, Austin simply existed in his room, playing Call of Duty and eating whatever my parents bought him. What bothered me the most, looking back, was that nobody ever asked me how I was doing, if I could actually afford all this, if I had my own bills to pay. They just assumed that because I made good money, I had unlimited money to give away. The truth is, I did make good money, but I also lived in Chicago where rent isn't exactly cheap. I had student loans I was still paying, a car I financed, and I wanted to have some sort of social life and save for my future. But every time I mentioned anything about wanting to reduce the help, my mom pulled out the guilt card, like, "Oh, Derek, I thought you cared about your family. We raised you and gave you everything, and now that we need you, you turn your back on us." And I'd give in. I always gave in, because I felt like shit every time I considered saying no. So, anyway, in September of last year, I was in a meeting with a client when my phone started buzzing like crazy. It was calls from the bank, and when I say from the bank, I mean from the fraud and security line, which is never a good sign. I stepped out of the meeting for a few minutes and called back, and this guy, named Gregory, told me there was a suspicious charge on my credit card for $50,000 to a travel agency. $50,000. I literally couldn't breathe for a second and told him it had to be a mistake, that I hadn't made any purchase like that someone probably cloned my card or something. Gregory told me they were going to investigate, but that he needed to confirm some details. And when he asked if anyone else had access to my card or my account information, something in my stomach twisted badly. That night, I drove straight to my parents' house, which is like 45 minutes from my apartment in the suburbs, and when I got there, Austin was in the living room, playing video games like always, and my parents were watching TV. I asked them directly if they knew anything about a $50,000 charge on my card, and the way my mom avoided my gaze told me everything. She started with the typical, "Well, Derek, we need to talk about something," and I already knew. I already knew they had done it. Turns out they had planned a Mediterranean cruise, all 3 of them, my mom, my dad, and Austin, a luxury trip for 3 weeks with all excursions included, cabins with private balconies, the unlimited drinks package, everything. And they had charged it to my credit card without asking me, without even mentioning it to me before. When I asked them how the hell they had my card information, My mom admitted she had written it down months ago when I gave them my card to buy something for the house, and she memorized the numbers and kept them just in case. Just in case what? I yelled. Just in case you decided to steal $50,000 from me for a luxury vacation while I work like a slave to support all of you. And that's when my mom dropped the bomb of, "But Derek, you're doing so well, and we've never been able to take nice vacations, and we thought since you always help us, you wouldn't mind. We wanted it to be a surprise." A surprise. As if robbing me was a gift or something. Austin didn't even look up from his game during this entire conversation, and my dad was just sitting there looking uncomfortable but not saying anything to defend me. I told them they were going to cancel that trip immediately and that I was going to dispute the charge with the bank. And my mom started crying, saying they had already counted on that vacation, that she had already told all her friends, that it would be so embarrassing to cancel now. And I was like, embarrassing for who? For you who literally stole from me? But no. In my mom's mind, I was the bad guy for not letting them keep my money for their dream vacation. I left there so angry I was shaking while driving. And that night I barely slept thinking about all the money I had given them over the years, all the sacrifice, and this is how they repaid me. The next day, I formally filed the fraud dispute with the bank, and Gregory asked me to go to a branch to fill out papers and give my official statement that I had not authorized that charge. While we were reviewing everything, Gregory asked me if I wanted them to review other recent charges on my account, and I said yes, thinking maybe we'd find one or two more. I wasn't prepared for what we found. Turns out that in the last 4 months, my family had been using my credit card for all kinds of things. A new TV for $4,500, furniture for $8,000, designer clothes for Austin for like $6,000, meals at expensive restaurants, electronics, literally whatever you can think of. In total, adding the cruise and everything else, they had charged $93,000 to my card. $93,000. I sat in that bank office feeling like I'd been kicked in the stomach. Gregory was looking at me with a mixture of pity and professionalism, and he told me we could dispute all those charges as fraud, and that we'd probably win the case because I had all the proof that I hadn't authorized any of it. I signed everything I needed to sign, and when I left that bank, something in me changed. I was no longer the Derek who let himself be manipulated. I was no longer the idiot who worked hard so his parasite family could live better than him. It was over. That night, I created a group chat with my parents and Austin and sent them a very clear message. I told them I had disputed all the charges as fraud, that the bank was investigating, and that from that moment on all financial help from me was over. No rent, no food, no bills, zero. I told them to have a nice life and that I hoped those vacations they were never going to take had been worth destroying our relationship. My mom called me immediately screaming and crying, saying how could I do this to them? That we were family, that she raised me and gave me everything. I told her what she gave me was a lesson on how not to treat people who help you, and I hung up. Austin sent me messages saying I was an asshole and that they had only taken what I was giving them every month anyway. I blocked his number. Like 2 weeks after all that, I decided I needed more physical space from my family. So I looked for a new apartment closer to downtown, a nice place in a building with a doorman and everything, like more expensive than where I lived, but worth every penny for the peace of mind. I didn't tell my parents I was moving. I just did it one Saturday with help from some friends from work. It was liberating, honestly, like starting over without that constant burden of knowing my family was squeezing every last drop out of me. Things got interesting when the debt collectors started arriving. Turns out that since the bank determined it had indeed been fraud, they absorbed the cost initially but then went after my family to recover the money. Austin started getting calls every day, several times a day, from different collection agencies demanding he pay the $93,000. My cousin Nicole, who's kind of gossipy but I like her, kept me updated on all the drama. She told me Austin was having panic attacks from the constant calls, that my parents were desperate trying to find lawyers to help them for free, that the house was total chaos. And I'm not gonna lie, part of me felt a dark satisfaction hearing all that. Does it sound bad? Maybe. Do I care? Not really. Austin finally got a job, his first job in 3 years, flipping burgers at a diner near his house. Nicole sent me a photo of him in his uniform and greasy cap, and I saved that photo like a trophy. But guess what? Prince Austin couldn't handle the real world for more than 2 weeks. He quit saying the job was too hard and that his boss was mean to him, basically that he had to work like a normal person for the first time in his life and he didn't like it. My parents didn't kick him out of the house or demand he get another job, because of course not, they're still the same parents who turned him into the useless parasite he is. Meanwhile, my parents started falling behind on their mortgage payments because they no longer had my $2,000 a month to cover the difference between what my dad was earning at his part-time job. He had finally found something at a hardware store, and what they actually needed. Nicole told me they had received notices from the bank and were going into default. Like 2 months after I cut contact, my parents showed up at my new apartment. I don't know how they got my address. Probably Nicole gave it to them accidentally or something. They rang the doorbell on a Sunday morning when I was having breakfast watching Netflix peacefully, and when I looked through the peephole and saw it was them, I almost didn't open. But I opened, because I guess part of me was curious to see what they wanted. They came in and sat in my living room without me inviting them, and started with the same old speech, that please forgive them, that they were going to lose the house if I didn't help them, that they had been fools, but that I was still their son, and they were my parents. My mom was crying for real this time. Not the manipulative crying of always, but genuine tears of desperation. My dad looked 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him, tired and defeated. And for a second, just 1 second, I felt that old guilt trying to climb back up. But then I remembered that day at the bank with Gregory. I remembered seeing $93,000 in charges I hadn't made. I remembered years of giving and giving without receiving even a genuine thank you, and something in me hardened. I told them no, that they had to leave, that they had made their decision when they decided to rob me, and that now they had to live with the consequences. My mom asked me how I could be so cold. What kind of son lets his parents lose their house? I answered, what kind of parents steal from their son who had been supporting them for years, and that if they lost the house, it was because they brought it on themselves. I walked them to the door and haven't seen them since. Eventually, they sold the house. They had no choice because they couldn't pay the mortgage, and the bank was about to foreclose anyway. They moved to a small apartment like 2 bedrooms in a not-so-nice area, all 3 of them squeezed in there. Austin had to get another job because the debt collectors formally sued him, and a judge ruled that yes, he owed $93,000 plus court costs and all that. He got a job at a warehouse loading boxes, and his wages started being garnished, automatically to pay the debt. Nicole tells me he's making like $1,200 every 2 weeks, but only sees like $300, because the rest goes straight to paying what he owes. The best part, and I know it sounds horrible but it's true, was when they repossessed his car. Austin had a Mustang that my parents had bought him like 3 years ago, when they still had money, probably money, I had given them, now that I think about it. And one afternoon the tow truck guys showed up at his work and took it straight from the parking lot. His co-workers saw the whole thing, and Nicole told me Austin came home that day crying from the humiliation. Now he takes the bus to work, and I guess he's finally experiencing how normal people who have to work for everything they have live. The truth is, I don't regret anything. There are days when my mom sends me long text messages about how family is forever and that I should forgive them, but I read them and archive them without responding. Austin sent me a message like a month ago apologizing, saying he had been immature and that he understood why I was angry. But then he ended the message, asking if I could lend him money for a used car, because the bus was affecting his mental health. I blocked him again. Nicole is still my connection to that side of the family, and she keeps me updated on everything without pressuring me to forgive them or help them, which I appreciate. My life now is completely different. I have money in my savings account for the first time in years. I'm planning a trip to Japan next year that I always wanted to do, but could never afford because I was financing my family's lifestyle. I go out with my friends without having to calculate every expense, thinking about how much I need to send home. It's liberating in a way I can't even fully explain. Sometimes I feel guilty. I'm not gonna lie, especially when I think about my dad, who was always quieter and basically got trapped in the middle of all this. But then I remember he also had years to tell my mom to stop, years to defend Austin less, years to defend me, and he chose not to. Last week, Nicole told me Austin is finally taking seriously the idea of looking for a better job, because the warehouse one barely makes ends meet with all the wage garnishment. Apparently, he's taking online classes in programming or something, trying to get some certification that will help him get an office job. Part of me, a very, very small part, hopes he makes it. Not for him, but because I want him to understand that hard work is what gets you somewhere, not living off others. But most of me just doesn't think about him at all. I guess the point of this whole story is that sometimes family can be the people who take advantage of you the most, and it's okay to walk away when they cross the line. They crossed my line when they stole almost $100,000 from me, and I don't regret cutting them off completely. Is it hard? Yes. Do I feel bad? Sometimes. Also, yes. Would I do it again? Without hesitation. Because at the end of the day, I busted my ass working and studying to have a better life, and it wasn't so my lazy brother could live like a king while I paid for everything. Sometimes cutting toxic people out of your life is the best thing you can do for yourself, even if those people share your blood.